Our next guest is a two-time NBA champ turned broadcaster. On Sunday, you can see him squeezed between Charles and Shaq at the NBA All-Star Game on TNT. And he's got a book he wrote. It's called Talk of Champions. Please welcome Kenny Smith. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man.
I have to tell you, I do want to tell you, I love your show. I love watching you and Charles and Shaq and Ernie. I would watch you guys talk about anything. It doesn't have to be basketball. You could be talking about any subject, and I would watch.
We have a lot of fun. But the funny thing is, like, people say that I didn't watch the game, but I watched you guys. I'm like, that's like going to a concert and say, I don't want to go to the concert. I just want to hear people talk about it. Like, it's a different feeling. It's flattering.
I don't agree. It's like a comedy show. My wife has no interest in basketball, and yet she will sit down with me and watch your show. It's like, oh, okay, these guys are on. Because you're just busting each other's balls.
We're late night TV. That's really, we all grew up with the late night TV feel. So we kind of emulate that on our show because basketball just happens to be the anchor, but we don't stick on that.
Right, and I'm glad you don't. This book is broken down in chapters. Each chapter is like focused on a different person who meant a lot to you.
Yes.
Or means a lot to you in your life. Who are some of the people in the chapter?
Wow, I have a variety of people from, basketball. Obviously, Bill Russell is one of them. He was my first coach, one of the legendary people.
Wow.
Dean Smith, rest their souls. Charles and Shaq. And I told them I was doing a tell-all book. They were like, what'd you talk about a tell-all book, Kenny? I was like, no, but the book is, I tell everything I learned great from them. And all of the things that I learned from all of these different people. Michael Jordan is in there as a chapter as well.
Have they read the book, Charles and Shaq?
That should be our next quiz.
Yeah.
We should do on the show like a 5-question quiz, and whoever gets them wrong.
Maybe you should have written some crappy stuff about them in the book just to get them to read the book.
But they honestly, we joke a lot. You'll see me push Shaq into a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And you'll see all the shenanigans, but I've learned so much from Shaq from a business standpoint. One of the smartest businessmen I ever met. Charles, in terms of speaking your mind and understanding how to say things that you really believe in your head. Those things are things you can't teach.
And nothing from Ernie?
Oh, Ernie is the authentic. No, Ernie is authentic. He's the most genuine human being you will ever meet. If you need a ride and you need to get someone, you have a flat tire, that's my first call. I'm not calling Shaq or Chuck.
No AAA.
No,
you call
I'm
Ernie.
calling Ernie.
So let's start with Michael Jordan. One of the chapters is about Michael.
Yeah.
Many people who follow basketball know this. Many who do not know this, that Michael Jordan actually recruited you to play at North Carolina.
Yeah, so I was on my recruiting trip, and he and another player named Buzz Peterson were my guides. But he was Mike Jordan. This is not Michael.
Okay.
Very Southern.
Uh-huh.
I'm from New York City, so we say he's a country bumpkin. And
you considered him to be a country bumpkin?
Without question.
Wow. Wow.
But his competitive spirit lived and was the reason why I went there. There was a story, Jimmy, where my dad used to say, "Oh, you got to have the eye of the tiger." You got to have the eye of the tiger if you want to be a great player. And we're in his car, and he's driving me this thing. He says, "You know what? You know what you got?" And he puts the song on. He says, and it's the Eye of the Tiger song.
Michael Jordan.
I didn't know my dad had ever said that. And it was like, oh, this is not coincidence. I'm coming to North Carolina.
And then did you and Michael sit there and listen to the entirety of Eye of the Tiger?
Well, it was, it's the 80s and 90s. It's like, that's a big hit then, you know what I'm saying? Rap music wasn't where it was now, so we listened to Eye of the Tiger.
You were like a real New York kid, right?
Yes.
Like with the Knicks and the Nets and all that stuff, you would go to the games. And Michael, you said, was a country bumpkin. Did you rub off on him in some way?
Well, the whole team, initially, my name wasn't Kenny, it was New York. Hey, New York, grab this. Because I was, the freshman, you got to do all the duties and all of the chores, the hazing, so to speak.
Right.
So New York, go get that, New York. So I changed my name to Ken NY. I was just like...
Ken NY, I like that.
I'm New York all the way. But, I think some of it rubbed off on all of the guys. And rap music, for sure. So I'm first-generation rap music.
You introduced them
Without
to those?
question. There was no rap stations, no hip-hop stations in North Carolina before I came. I used to carry this big box, those,
the boom
put
box,
it on
yeah.
the big boom box. I'd have it, and I'd be blasting the music throughout the campus. So I was first generation.
What artists are we talking about?
Oh, we're talking Run DMC, I'm first generation.
You guys all wearing Adidas at that time?
We weren't supposed to, because our school wasn't sponsored by them. However, we were wearing them at that time.
Even Michael at that time.
Yeah, and what they used to do, Jimmy, is they used to give me money when I was to go home. Everyone was like, go shopping for me. And so all the guys, because in New York at that time, the only time you can get sneakers of different variations and different cut, different styles. So I would always overcharge them.
Sure.
I was a great stylist, but I was overcharging them big time.
And you would bring shoes back to Michael Jordan, which is a crazy thought.
A guy who has Jordans. Exactly. But do you know what's
Jordan?
Well, you know what's even crazier? My youngest daughter, one day, we're in the mall, and she goes, we're buying sneakers. And she's like, don't you know Michael Jordan? She doesn't know the history. She's 7 at the time. I'm like, yeah, Michael. She's like, well, why aren't we supporting him and buying his sneakers?
Oh.
So I literally call him. I text him, actually. And I'm like, hey, I'm in the mall. My daughter said, buy sneakers. So I'm thinking he's going to go, well, you know what? Just don't worry. I'm going to send you boxes. He goes, yeah, she's smart. You should. I was like, what? Can I get some free gear?
That's why he's the greatest.
That's why he's the greatest.
Competitive spirit.
No
And you guys roomed together on the road. It's really, it must be so strange to look at him now and think back on those times when you guys were kids.
You know what? You know what's scary about it? The things that he would say. Because when you're a freshman, they would room you with older classmen. And so I would room with him one time, then another senior, and we'd kind of rotate. And then I was a talker. That's why I got the job I got. So I stay up all night talking, and we just, you're hearing about dreams and aspirations and what they're going to be. And everything that he said actually came into fruition.
Real.
And so, you learn those stories about self-motivation and self-talk and how you could talk yourself into success and have a harvest of certain things. So yes, without question, it's amazing to hear someone actually predict what they were going to do.
What about Bill Russell as your first coach with the Kings? Is that when you were on the Sacramento Kings?
Sacramento Kings. So Bill Russell, the late, great Bill Russell, drafted me and into the NBA and was my first coach. And, the interesting thing, they had a rule I had to sit next to him on every bus ride.
Really?
Because he's like, you want to be a champion or you want to be a loser like them? So he's like, so I used to have to sit next to him, and he would just tell stories. And he'd be in the middle of a story. He's like, yeah, so I was going, and Martin was coming back, and he was like, I'm like, Martin? He's like, yeah, Martin Luther King. Just randomly, it's like people that I read about in history, he actually knew on a first name basis, and it was just it was overwhelming. Crazy. But there's one thing I live my life by what he said to me. We were looking at all of these players coming in from overseas. And I said, Coach Russell, you telling me there's not a guy in Alabama that's just as good as a guy in Ukraine or Croatia? Why are you flying all the way over there? And he says, Kenny, as an African-American, you should never not want inclusion. And I stopped, because he could have took like a joking moment and kept joking about it.
Yeah.
But he taught me a life lesson, and I said, okay, that's the way I live my life to this day.
Wow, that's a pretty good lesson.
Yes.
I mean, that's what happens when you're hanging around with Martin, I guess.
Exactly.
You got the NBA All-Star Game weekend in Indianapolis.
Yes.
It was Thursday through Sunday, all the different events. I know you have a charity poker, an All-Star charity poker tournament.
This is my 21st year of doing events at All-Star. And it's the who's who.
Who's playing in this tournament?
Well, last year we had from Chris Tucker to A-Rod to Dr. J comes every year. I've had my events where LeBron has been. We have everyone that's been at these events, so it's a who's who. It's tough to get tickets, guys. I'm sorry, but the funny thing, I don't know if you remember, the very first one, you and Uncle Frank.
That's
did
right.
a live remote.
And my Uncle Frank.
Your first year. was my first year doing it.
Oh, wow, wow.
And so you did a live remote from it, and that's when your show was live, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so you did a live remote, and you're like, coming in. Uncle Frank was there, bless his soul.
Yeah, he
man,
was dressed. We put him in a basketball uniform. It was ridiculous.
Hilarious.
Yeah, yeah.
Hilarious. So
somehow you survived that.
Yeah, so this is my second time on the show.
Well, it's great to have you here in person, and people cannot go to the poker tournament, or it is.
I'll tell them how to get there.
Yes, Kenny will be.
Tell you how to get there.
Just text Kenny and he'll get you in.
Yeah,
Don't
DM
worry.
me, DM
This
me.
is the book. It's called Talk of Champions in the NBA All-Star Game this Sunday on TNT. Kenny Smith, everybody. We'll be back with Kygo and Ava Max.